Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. You hear us talk about mining numbers all the time, about money, share prices, the gold price in particular, platinum more recently. But just a reminder of the humanity behind it and the families, the hundreds of families waiting for word from their relatives stuck underground at the Sibanye Stillwater mine, and just how difficult that situation is. Any developments, of course, we'll bring that to you through the course of the Money Show, but also just a reminder of the sort of human cost, and in some ways, the entire wealth of South Africa as an industrialized economy is exacted a very, very high human cost. Well, let's hope that everything ends well there. My understanding is that none of the people underground are in any danger and none of them have been hurt. That's the information I have. Let's just hope that there is a good outcome to that and that the top people in the country are on it. I do know that the mines work together when it comes to issues of mine safety. I have no doubt that that is the case at the moment. The interesting comment from the Communications Ministry about Starlink and the suggestion, they say, that there's no link between the meeting and the Oval Office, between Elon Musk being there, I think he was standing next to Clement Manyatela, and then the fact that the sort of changes to the law are being gazetted now. We'll get a view from Duncan McLeod in just a moment, but I think that might be a little bit of a hard sell. To be fair, the Communications Ministry has been sort of talking about this for a little while. It's sort of been in the water, if you like. People have been talking about this. What I don't get is why this couldn't have happened months ago. I mean, there have been some precedents. So why couldn't have happened a long, long time ago? I don't know. And of course, it's not just Starlink, by the way. We mustn't forget Amazon has the Caper service that they're looking at. I think Starlink probably has the jump on them. They provide a better service, I don't know, but certainly is more advanced in the rollout. I imagine that the Caper satellites are being launched by Elon Musk too, but that's a story for another day. But the point is that we must not allow a monopoly on internet service providers anywhere in terms of satellites. If you look at some of the nonsense that runs through Grok, which is the AI that is controlled by Elon Musk, and they were talking, you were asking questions about the weather and getting responses about white genocide last week. The idea of letting someone like that control access to the internet scares me. And a month ago, if I had said something like that, I would have thought of myself as a conspiracy theorist. Looking at what's going on in the United States, I'm not so sure now. Isn't that a shocking fact? Conversations also to come, of course. We'll talk about Starlink. We'll talk about electricity. And don't forget, talking about art. Looking forward to that conversation around half an hour from now. It does seem to me that art has kind of got cooler. Maybe I've got less cool, I'm not sure. But I do think that what you really are seeing is the growth of a sort of more diverse art market. Good to hear from you tonight. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes on 072 702 1702. Don't forget tonight as well, the Friday Biz Blitz.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
We heard that comment in the EWN bulletin, the Communications Ministry, saying that there's no link between the meeting in the Oval Office between our president and the American president. The fact Elon Musk was there, and the decision today, or the publication today of the Government Gazette, showing that the Communications Minister, Solly Malatsi, is now asking for public consultation, in other words, commentary, on changing BEE legislation or the interpretation of BEE rules around certain electronic services. Essentially, the change, if it goes through, would allow Elon Musk to operate Starlink here while retaining 100% ownership. Duncan McLeod is the founder and editor at Techcentral.co.za. Duncan, good evening. I mean, I want to believe the Communications Ministry, but the timing can't. I mean, surely it's too much to ask that it was a coincidence.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like a coincidence, but it is possible. The Communications Minister, Solly Malatsi, did announce his plans to to come up with a policy direction to ICASA on this very matter about 6 months ago. So they have been working on it. Whether they decided they were going to release it today because of the what happened in the White House this week, we don't know, but it's certainly curious timing.
I mean, if they've been working on it for 6 months and all we get is a government gazette, once the decision had been made to actually go this route, should it really take that long? I mean, I know some lawyers, they're expensive, but they work more quickly than that.
It has taken some time, I must say. I mean, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and the politics in the GNU, but yeah, 6 months does seem like a very long time to come up with what is in effect only a draft order here that still is going to be debated extensively. Stakeholders have 30 days now to respond to this draft, and then no doubt there'll be further ructions and debate about its content, etc., etc. So it may still be some time before this actually sees the light of day. And do remember that ICASA is an independent regulator, and it can actually decide that it doesn't want to do this. It may decide that the rules it has at the moment are just fine, thank you very much. But of course, it'll be under a lot of political pressure to make these changes. So it's very interesting to see what the outcome is.
This would affect the whole sector. Who stands to lose out if Starlink is allowed in? Which is really a different way of me asking you, who's likely to oppose this change?
I don't think there's going to be a lot of opposition to it. Provided the new rules are applied across the board, it can't only apply to satellite providers. I think it has to apply to all licensees in the market. It's not clear to me from the reading of the draft document whether it extends to the entire market. I think it does. But it certainly wouldn't make sense to say to one group of telecommunications licensees you have to have equity shareholding by black investors and then turn around and say to the satellite guys, actually, these rules don't apply to you. I think if they're going to change the rules, it has to apply to all telecommunications licensees in South Africa.
I think there's this expectation that if Starlink comes, everyone kind of gets good, fast, cheap internet. It's a bit more complicated than that, right? I mean,
yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'm used to relatively cheap internet through cell phones when I'm not at home and fiber when I'm at home.
Yeah, if you live in a city in South Africa that's well served by a fiber network like OpenServe or Vumatel or one of those guys, you're probably not going to get Starlink. But if you're a farmer or you're in industry, you work in agriculture or you work in the resources sector and you've got a mine in remote Limpopo or the Northern Cape or somewhere like that where you need reliable, fast internet, there's going to be a huge market for that. And certainly I think that, people's holiday homes, there might not be good internet where those are. And so there is a big pent-up demand for these type of services in South Africa. But you're also going to find that companies like Vodacom and MTN also work with Project Caper, work with Starlink and others to provide these services. So they'll become effectively resellers of this service, and they may even partner with them to offer satellite phone calls and access to the internet on your smartphone. At some point, these satellite operators are working on this technology. So when you go out of coverage, say Vodacom coverage, you go down to, I don't know, the remote Northern Cape where there are no base stations. Your phone could still be connected, but using a satellite service rather than the terrestrial infrastructure built by those companies. So they are going to compete in some respects, but they're also going to work together. They're going to partner to offer these services in South Africa.
One of the interesting things about our market at the moment may be that because we're getting Starlink a little later than some other places, not all, and I must just point out that some countries, I think Taiwan was one, I think India may have been another, imposed quite strict conditions on Starlink too, and didn't seem to have all of the fuss and bother and commentary from Elon Musk along the way. But right. We'll be getting Starlink a little later than a lot of other countries, while other services are trying to catch up. And I'm talking specifically about, say, Amazon's Caper network. Would that give Caper more of a fighting chance here than in other markets?
Potentially, but Caper is still very much behind Starlink. Starlink is the world leader in what's called low Earth orbit broadband internet services beamed from space. They have the first mover advantage. They are the biggest player in the space, and Amazon is definitely coming from far behind with Project Kuiper. Will it give them an advantage? Probably not a big one. I think Starlink is licensed in the next year or so, which I think is likely. Then I don't think there'll be a meaningful advantage for the other guys.
I mean, I presume, Starlink and Kuiper will probably be the two that people think of. There might be others, but they take quite a long time to sort themselves out. This whole world is moving very quickly, and I'm struck by how it is that once again, policy in the ICT space has become so controversial. For so long, we weren't able to have proper auctions of spectrum. Things held us back there. I was reading a comment in IT Web by Philip de Wet this afternoon. He was making the point that, for years, experts like yourself, Duncan, have made the point of how important communications technology is. And things have moved so slowly in South Africa. I mean, never mind the right or wrong of this or that. It's just moved so slowly.
Yeah, I mean the digital TV migration project, I think, is the case study of how not to do a project of this scale in the ICT sector. And hopefully we've learned some lessons. I mean, there've been. We keep shooting ourselves in the foot in so many respects. We really should just open up the industry to competition and lessen the red tape. And so a problem I've got with the big mobile operators, for example, and it's not just them; it's all the incumbent dominant players in any industry, I guess. But they always argue that when the new player comes in, they should get the same level of tough regulation, of extensive regulation applied to them because we've got it. They never seem to argue, well, actually, let's start to loosen some of this regulation. Let's get rid of some of this red tape. Let's actually free up business to compete. And I guess it's in the interest, if you're an incumbent operator, to argue for a high level of regulation because it makes it difficult for new entrants to come into the market. But I think as a country, we should be tearing down this regulation, get rid of this red tape. We need investment. We need business. We need to grow this economy, and you don't do that through red tape, through blocking deals, through rules and regulations. Let's free up business to compete. Let investors come in. I do agree with Musk on that point. Get rid of these rules. We don't need them. It slows down business. It hurts the economy. It hurts employment. Free it up. And now, I must just say that when I say I agree with Musk on this point, I think Musk is doing this for very different reasons. I think he's very much injecting himself into American politics, and a lot of what he's saying about South Africa and the licensing of Starlink here, I think it is really about pandering to the right-wing voters in America and pandering to Trump as well, I guess. So I think it's all about American politics, more so than it actually is about licensing Starlink in South Africa.
Duncan McLeod, thank you so much, founder and editor at techcentral.co.za.
7:02. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
One of the big shifts in our economy over the last couple of years has been the inclusion of privately owned independent power producers into what is still really an Eskom grid. Many of them sell power directly to Eskom. Eventually, already, some of them will sell power directly to you. Sasol is one of those that's getting in on the act. They had that big announcement last week. One of the companies that's been involved in this for some time is NG SA. They supply just over 1,000 megawatts of power through peaking plants. Mohammed Hussein is the CEO of NG SA. Mohammed, good evening to you. Quite a slow process to get all of this going. You've now been producing and selling power to Eskom for a little while. How's the process been going so far?
Hello, Stephen. Look, I think you're right in saying that it was slow to start. There was a period where it accelerated very nicely indeed, and then it stalled again. But, I mean, of course, this introduction of IPPs into South Africa was new to the country, new to the administration, and they needed to get their heads around it in terms of how this actually works and what the risk framework looks like, etc. But I do believe that lots of lessons have been learned and a lot of independent power projects are now connected to the grid. And we can see that, the impetus to continue the introduction of IPPs, especially given where Eskom is only going to accelerate.
You, as I understand it, use peaking plants. That makes it quite difficult to use renewable energy. Where do you get your power from?
So, no, let me clarify. The peaking power plant, which is 1,000 megawatts, peaking means that it is not dispatched as baseload. It is not dispatched as mid-merit. So it is dispatched only to the extent Eskom needs that power very rapidly. So the ramp up of the peaking power plant is seconds and minutes. And when Eskom needs it, they notify us and that plant is up and running. So on average, it is running for, let's say, a load factor of about 5%. So that's the definition of peaking. It is there, it's available, and when Eskom needs it, it starts up and power is made, almost immediately available.
How are you creating the electricity, though? How are you generating it?
Okay, so the peaking power plant specifically is generating electricity by burning diesel.
Okay, yeah, I presumed it would have to be that or maybe gas. The market is changing and we're seeing a lot more entrants coming in. Are you seeing more competition? I mean, it's a slow process, sure, but there must be quite a lot of interest in the sector, especially now that it is up and running.
Yes, I mean, there's tremendous competition in this space, especially in the renewable space. So when we're talking about onshore wind and solar PV, these auctions that the IPP offers the launches from time to time, I mean, there's tremendous appetite for it. So when they, for example, launch a program to procure 2 gigawatts of wind and 1 gigawatt of PV, it is oversubscribed by 2, 3, 4 times. So there's tremendous appetite and, of course, tremendous competition to secure these megawatts that are being auctioned.
One of the issues in the space that I find fascinating is the pricing. So the price we pay for electricity is going up dramatically, more and more generating capacity coming online, some of it through the grid, some of it, based on people's homes. You have contracts with Eskom that I'm sure have a very specific pricing schedule that must hold no matter what. If they need electricity, this is how much you're going to get for it. It must be quite complicated to work it out for your business.
Look, I think, I wouldn't say complicated, but effectively what happens is that we determine what is the capital associated to construct such a facility. We determine what is the resource that's available. In other words, if it's a wind facility, we collect wind data over a period of at least 2 years. We make some projections of what the wind load factor is going to be like for the duration of the PPA, which is, for example, 20 years. So that resource that we make an assumption on and the capex that is associated to build this facility in an economic model determines what the tariff is. What's good for Eskom is that they don't have to rely only on NG to say, look, for a 100 megawatt wind farm, here's the tariff. Because as I just said, the auction is oversubscribed. So for that 100 megawatts, there's 10 other developers that have also put bids in for that same 100 megawatts. So Eskom has the luxury of ensuring that they can select the most competitive tariff for that capacity of wind power.
From what you see in the industry, do you see power prices ever coming down? Well, maybe not coming down, but at least not going up, because I think that is going to be the new sort of frontier of argument in South Africa, is the sheer price that you're paying for electricity.
Look, I think in the renewable space in South Africa and globally, the trend for equipment related to these technologies, whether it's panel prices for PV or turbine prices for wind farms, historically have been trending downwards. In fact, significantly so over the last 5 years. Of course, COVID was a blimp. The invasion in Ukraine impacted capex pricing, freight costs, etc., etc. So there was a blimp again. But in general, the trajectory for wind and PV pricing is going down, and we continue to see it going down. If anything, it could stabilize. But the likelihood that we're going to see an upward trajectory is not something that's on the table today yet.
I mean, that should, in the end, be good news for most of us. It could just take a little while. This is quite a big transition that we're seeing, and at some point, this transition has to affect the price that we're paying.
No, absolutely. I mean, the more renewables you get onto the grid, the weighted average cost of power should trend downwards. Absolutely.
Mohammed Hussein, thanks very much indeed. Good to hear from you. The CEO of NG SA.
Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Zwelakhe Mnguni is the CI, Chief Investment Officer, Benguela Global Fund Manager. Zwelakhe, good evening. Confirmation from Techcentral tonight that they want to buy the shares in IO that they don't already own. I mean, this is a company whose share price has lost 99% of its value since it was listed.
Indeed, Stephen. Good evening to you and your listeners. Certainly, if you look back at this story, I mean, they listed at 43 rand in 2018 and took 4.3 billion from investors. And today they are offering to take that company at just under 170 million. Again, if you look at what transpired over the last 7 years, was predominantly they've been mired in controversy and legal battles. So they didn't operate as they promised. They were caught up in the battle. The outcome of which was they took 4.3 billion. The company lost in cash about 1.2 billion. And then they paid themselves dividends to shareholders of about 1.3 billion. So they actually, this whole operation that was making noise and everything ended up with a clean 1.4 billion being taken away from investors. And I think it highlights the need for a thorough due diligence by those who allocate investors hard-earned money, but also issues of governance, how important they are in the investment arena.
Maybe it's easier for me to say this than for you, Zwelakhe, but I mean, obviously, when that amount of money goes missing, I wonder if we need to use the word stolen.
It might be easier for you to say, but I just think that, I mean, it reminds me of the same thing happened in the dot-com bubble, companies listing at high prices and then delisting at lower prices, and the founders taking a big slug of money for themselves out of investors' pockets. So it is not only the fact that it is listed, but it is still a jungle out there in terms of you could lose money.
Starlink, you would have heard the conversation earlier. I mean, it looks like the sort of equity demand that 1/3 of it be owned by black people is going to be removed, and this is, a common demand in almost every sector.
I think this is a classic example of a miscommunication from a government level, that we've had all these equity equivalent instruments to assist international companies that cannot offer equity to local partners. And those equity equivalent products are working and they provide value. So we actually, as a business, we have been supported by one of those structures and have been able to provide internships and jobs to people as a result of such a scheme. What happened in the Starlink situation was that it was drama over drama, because Starlink didn't want to offer equity. The government, instead of being focused on investment, getting the investment into the country, they focused on insisting on just a pure BE ownership, and that's what got us caught here. It's a simple problem of miscommunication. I mean, the scheme is there and it works, and I'm a living evidence of that.
Zwelakhe Mnguni, thanks very much indeed. Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund Managers.
The Money Show.
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
And DSTV channel 856.
011 8830702 021 4460567. Don't forget the Friday Biz Blitz in a few moments. Your chance, of course, to walk away with the title of winner on The Money Show. Quantum Foods had an update out today. Their profit tripled, mainly because of the end of the avian influenza epidemic, which really affected them last year. And there's a lot of numbers to look at. They reopened their Pinetown packing station. They'd had to close that at one point because of all the trouble they'd had. But I noticed in there that egg prices, according to them, the price they were selling eggs for, came down 14% this year. And that really tells you what the end of the pandemic will do. The end of the avian flu epidemic will actually do. But egg prices down 14%, a very cheap form of protein, certainly would have had a big impact in a lot of baskets.
The Money Show.
The Friday File.
The Friday File.
Well, this weekend at Shepstone Gardens in Joburg, just off Louis Botha, the R&B Latitudes Festival. It's the annual art festival in Joburg. It does seem to me to be growing bigger and bigger. Roberta Coci is the person in charge of the festival and someone who's been putting it together, one of the co-founders of R&B Latitudes. Roberta, good evening. I imagine it's sort of heading towards peak time for you there now. You started this back in 2019. What kind of demand was there for an event like this in the art world at the time?
Hi, Stephen. It was a very different time, obviously, but there was a space for it because the main art fair in Joburg catered very much to the big galleries. And we decided that we wanted to create a space for smaller galleries and also, quite unusually in the art world, for independent artists to be able to take place in an art fair directly themselves. So we created this platform on Nelson Mandela Square, an art fair, in 2019. But then, of course, as you know, things didn't go according to plan the next year, and things have changed dramatically since then.
Does that give you a different vibe, a different feel, do you think, to the other big art events in Joburg? The fact that you are speaking to independent, I imagine, along with that, less well-established artists?
Absolutely. I think it makes it a much more accessible space. I think people come there, it's less intimidating. The price points are lower for people who are coming to look for their first piece of art, who may be just coming to explore, start dipping their toes. And I think also just because of the nature of it being younger, emerging artists, it's quite an exciting space to be in. There's a very fresh energy at the fair.
No, I'm sure. I mean, there would have been a time not very long ago where if you wanted to advertise an event like this that's new, you would have had to take out adverts, pay for them. The kind of art you're looking at is tailor-made for Instagram, isn't it? I mean, the kind of social media campaign that you can run now for almost nothing, you just basically need pictures of the work, must be quite incredible, and that would help a new event like yours.
Absolutely. But I mean, I must say, the traditional advertising, it still really works. I'll be getting a lot of messages after this interview from people I haven't heard from in years. The reach is amazing. But yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, we've got all the content. It's so visual. It's so beautiful. We don't have to do the work of coming up with campaigns. Absolutely.
The art that you find it gets attracted to you, so newer people who are less established was the phrase that I use. Does that change the kind of art that is actually on display?
Well, I must just quickly say that we do actually have from emerging to very established artists. But yes, definitely, I think more emerging artists don't work in media such as sculpture necessarily because they are a bit inaccessible. So you will see a lot more print editions, a lot more drawing, and, more established artists will work in oils and the less accessible media. So changes are from a medium front. And then, of course, as you watch an artist develop over their careers, their form obviously changes, their themes change. But absolutely. So I find that having this mix makes it a much more enriching experience.
When you design an art fair, there's certain things you want to do, and you've got little different. I was going to use the word enclaves. I don't know what the right word would be. Maybe that's not such a great word, but you've got little sort of rooms, different spaces. You've got to work out who goes where. And I've often thought that must be quite an interesting job because you wanted to match, and I know that venue, you wanted to sort of match the art that's on display.
So it's interesting you ask that because maybe for listeners who haven't been to the fair, it's at a very unique venue. It's indoor, outdoor. There are from these huge sandstone and marble halls to, as you say, these tiny little niches and gardens. And what's become really interesting about the fair, because now it's third year in, is that the artists in the galleries have started to create art to respond to the space that we put them in. So in the beginning, people wanted to be in the more traditional white cube spaces, but now we actually have galleries and artists asking to be in strange round rooms that don't actually have a wall that you can hang art on. So it's been really amazing to see how the venues actually inform the art.
As you move through it, do you get a different feeling from each different space?
Yeah, absolutely. We curate it in that way. So there's one space that has the very grand space I was speaking about, definitely has your more established galleries, the likes of Everard Reed and Stevenson and your big names. And then as you move to the other side where the gardens are, that's where we put all the independent artists. So to feel, it's a little bit less of a formal space. So, we work with the venue to create this flow.
How do you, so when you want to try and create that, right, a lot of it is determined, the feeling of it, the vibe of it, the sense of it is determined by the art that's on display. Do you start with the vibe you want to create? Do you try and put bits of a puzzle together? Do you let it kind of do its own thing? I imagine you have to, really.
So we try and curate it as much as we can, and I think that's one of the challenges of any, event of this scale. But of course, we're working with creatives, and that's the joy of it, that you can never quite visualize it until the art is actually in place. And there's always surprises, and they're usually the most wonderful surprises once the art is all installed.
Do you see a different type of person coming through from what you might have seen 10 years ago at a sort of art event? What I'm really looking for, Roberta, is do you find that maybe some of the people coming through are younger in some way? I mean, I have this idea in my head. I mean, I was horrified when I found myself at an art fair of my own volition because it meant that I was finally maturing in years. Do you find that the people who are coming through are a little bit younger than maybe they used to be?
Yeah, I think you'll be blown away if you see the audience. It's really, really young. We've been very lucky, and I think it's because we've been working with younger artists that we've drawn a younger crowd of collectors. And it's been fascinating because they have come every year. The galleries have been telling us this year that they met collectors in 2023 who bought their first little piece for maybe 2,000 Rand, and now every year they've bought something. They steadily their spend is increasing. So I think art is a little bit, it's intimidating at first, but then it seems to get quite addictive for some people, which is really great to see this.
I mean, one of the things about art is that people are still, no matter who you are, looking for something unique, something to make a statement. It's kind of tailor-made for that, and I imagine the festival is tailor-made for that too.
Absolutely, and it feels, there's just something about this event. I think it's a combination of the energy, the venue. It just feels really inspirational. So people come there and they kind of feel hopeful about Joburg again. It's a really great feeling. And I think people say they want to take a piece of it home. So as you say, it's something unique, something to remember this moment. We all kind of get caught up in this, and that's just what creativity does. It gives you optimism and this positive energy, and I feel really proud to be contributing to that in a small way.
One of the things about South Africa is I often think because of our diversity, because of the inequality, but just because of the social forces at work in our society, it should, in some ways, lead to, and this is a double-edged coin, but it should lead to some of the world's best art. We have debates here that you do not have in other places. Do you think that's going to be, or do you think it is already reflected in some way?
I think one of the common things that people tell me as they go, or foreigners who come here, but also largely South Africans who go traveling, is that they say they realize when going to other countries how incredible our art is. Because I think, as you say, it's just so laden. So if you go to an art gallery in Berlin, you're going to see, I'm probably not allowed to say this, but you're going to see the same thing over and over again. But here, you're dealing with so many different narratives. I mean, we just have so many people from so many different countries, communities, walks of life, dealing with the most horrendous issues on one side, and also just dealing with, we have a lot of very positive sentiment coming out of the art in South Africa as well. So, yeah, there's nothing boring or staid about our art, for sure.
Roberta Coci, thanks very much indeed. The co-founder of RMB Latitudes. Friday File on The Money Show tonight.
702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
All right, time now for the Friday Biz Blitz. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. You know how it works. We ask you a question. If you get it right, we move on to the next question. If you get it wrong, we move on to the next call-up. So those are the numbers. First question tonight. It's very easy. Which South African bank sponsors the Latitudes Art Fair, aiming to support and showcase African contemporary art? Which South African bank sponsors the Latitudes Art Fair? 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025.
Stephen Grootes
Taking your calls
on 011 883
0702.
The Friday Biz Blitz, you get the answer right, we move on to the next question. You get it wrong, we move on to the next call-up. That's the number, 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. Which South African bank sponsors the Latitudes Art Fair, aiming to support and showcase African contemporary art? Looking for the first caller with the correct answer. Also questions, of course, to come around a particular restaurant group, questions around radio, questions also, of course, around tariffs in the US. But our first question tonight is, which South African bank sponsors the Latitudes Art Fair? And if you get that right, of course, we'll move on to the next question as well for you tonight. So, of course, lots of questions around all of this, and it is fascinating in a way, a fun way to spend a Friday. Nosisi in Soweto, which South African bank sponsors the Latitudes Art Fair?
It's RMB, Rand Merchant Bank.
It is RMB. Nosisi. Okay, you ready for the second question?
I am.
Here we go. Izzy Kirsch founded which independent radio station?
Are you going to give me options? Okay, independent radio station.
Yeah.
Izzy Kirsch.
Izzy
oh
Kirsch.
My goodness.
I'll give you a hint. It was during the 1980s.
I was born in the 80s. I don't know.
It's a station that's very close to you, Nosisi.
I don't know, 702?
It is 702.
Oh my God!
Congratulations, it is 702. All right, Nosisi, third question. The Figo Cafe, Lupa Osteria, Mythos, Salsa, and Turn and Tender are owned by which JSE-listed company? They're all food, they're all restaurants. So it's Figo Cafe, Lupa Osteria, Mythos, Salsa, and Turn and Tender. Which JSE-listed company owns them all?
Oh, no. I have no idea.
All right, Nosisi.
I have no idea.
Thank you for playing. Thank you. Let's try Bandaru in Fourways. Bandaru High. Do you know the answer?
Tiger Brand.
No, I'll give you another guess, though. They're all restaurants. Figo, Lupa, Osteria, Mythos, Salsa, and Turn and Tender. Come on, Bandaru.
I wouldn't know, Steve. Sorry, sir. I don't know.
All right, man. Sorry, Bandaru. Let's try Phil in Cape Town. Phil, do you know the answer? Oh, we've lost Phil. Phil clearly doesn't know the answer. I don't know if that's a comment on Cape Town or a comment on Phil. But you've not been out recently to any of these restaurants to see where, in fact, who the owner is of these restaurants. But yeah, that is the current question on the Friday Biz Blitz. Who owns Figo Cafe, Lupa Osteria, Mythos, Salsa, and Turn and Tender? L on the line from Tshwane, Pretoria. Hi, L.
Ian, is it Famous Brands?
It is Famous Brands, L. Congratulations.
Lovely.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
The US government is proposing a 25% tariff on which technology company, raising concerns over the company's reliance on Chinese manufacturing. In the news today, L.
Oh, and I didn't pick up on that, but I am going to take a guess.
Yeah.
And go HP.
Sorry, L. It's not HP.
Right.
All right, Jabu was on the line. Jabu's gone, unfortunately. Might have got the answer at 011 8830702. Let's try Shiva in Fourways. Shiva, do you know the answer?
Apple.
It is Apple, Shiva.
Apple.
It is. Are you calling us on an Apple?
Yes, Apple 16, yeah.
Okay. Final question for you, Shiva. Dr. Richard Friedland is the CEO of which private hospital company? We spoke to him on Tuesday. Richard Friedland, CEO of which private hospital company?
Netcare?
It is Netcare, Shiva. Well, if that doesn't get you into the mood, I don't know what will for the weekend. Shiva, congratulations. You've won the Friday Biz Blitz. Good evening. You're with the Money Show at 7 o'clock.